My name is Loide Rosa Jorge, and I am a child of the diaspora. My mother is from Mozambique, which is located in the southeast part of the continent of Africa, and my father is from Guinea-Bissau, which is West Africa, and both countries are former colonies of Portugal.
My name is Henok Tesfaye. I'm the child of the diaspora. I am from Ethiopia. I came to this country early 90s. I've been here 25 years.
My name is Hassan Conte. I'm from Senegal, West Africa. I'm a child of the diaspora. The time I got here, it was only a couple of African teachers. So I come kind of cover a little bit the West Africa side.
My name is Heran Sarak Abrahan. I am from Ethiopia. I have been in the US now more than half my life, so I'm probably bicultural in that sense. I was born and raised in Ethiopia until I finished high school, which was 16 for me.
My name is Mamadou Samba, and I am a child of the African diaspora. I'm from Senegal, West Africa, which is on the west coast of Africa. We like to say that Senegal is the closest country to the United States as you can get from the African continent.
Hello, my name is Aster Mingeshkube, and I'm a child of the diaspora. In July of 1991, my parents came to the United States from Ethiopia. And exactly 3 months later, I was born. I'm very interested in working with my people, African diaspora, and immigrants in general. Growing up, I learned a lot of my culture and history through my father. He would always sit us, my brothers and I, sit down and tell us everything, even if it was the same story over and over and over. But those were some of the things that I have cherished and I keep to this day, and it's something that has definitely molded my identity. Growing up, my father tried his hardest to teach me Amharic, which is the national language of Ethiopia. And being in Lynchburg, Virginia, where there were no Africans, literally a population of 5, and that was my family, I pushed back. It was hard. It was really tough for me to even want to sit there and understand another language when none of my peers, none of the students, none of the kids I played with on the playground were speaking that language. So looking back now, I wish I had kind of obviously held on to it tighter, but I am glad that I do have the knowledge of the language now. But for my brothers, I know it's something that they are going through the same cycle, but having me as an older sister, they are learning that it is important to have your native tongue. It is something that you will hold for the rest of your life to communicate with your elders, with other immigrants, and develop your identity in a whole.
I had one of the more sort of rich childhoods growing up. My parents were in different ways very appreciative of the arts, and had close friends who were contemporary artists at that time in the 70s in Ethiopia. And so I grew up with a lot of theater people, music people, actors, performers around me. My parents made sure we attended every theater opening and every musical performance that I could go to as a young child. So that was a big part of my formative years. And then there was, family. There was the setting. Addis Ababa is a very cosmopolitan city. And so the exposure that comes with that as well. So a very rich and varied kind of childhood growing up.
So being a member of the African diaspora has always been a unique experience for me because I was always a part of a minority within a minority. So not only was I Black in America, but I was also African in America. And my parents happen to come from countries that don't have large groups of immigrants that migrate to the United States. So even within the African diaspora, I was a minority within a minority within a minority. And that created a space where I had to always find ways to connect with the people around me. So sometimes it was the Southern Africans, or it would be the Africans that spoke Portuguese. I was born in France, so my parents had a lot of French African friends or French-speaking friends. So there was a connection to the French or the Francophone diaspora. And then there was the community that we grew up in, which was a Seventh-day Adventist community. And so if nothing else was connecting me to the people around me, it would be the religious or the spiritual connection. And so I think one of the things that being a child of the diaspora has really taught me is to connect with people no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from, or better yet, to find ways to connect with them.
From the shame, I tears in the rain. No more. Far away from the pain, I tears in the rain. No more trembling heart with shame.
Growing up again in Lynchburg, one of the things I noticed my parents didn't have the advantage of was community. Community plays a huge role in how you develop, how you learn your culture, how you have access to material, and I see that in this area. So I'm interested in creating a network for those who do not live in Northern Virginia, who do not live in the DC or in Atlanta or Houston, or where there are huge hubs of the diaspora. But in the areas that are in Southern Virginia or somewhere out in California, wherever they are, that they have some type of way or platform to connect with one another. It's very crucial that they have these tools for integration so that they can bring up their children once they come to the United States, or have access to just basic health care or any other things that they normally wouldn't have the access to, all because of a language barrier or not being able to understand where to go. That's the biggest thing that I think for my parents was understanding where to go. That for them was definitely a big deal as far as having a community, not being present.
In the African community, sense of community is really geared towards neighborhood associations or country-based associations or culture-focused associations. So you have a lot of Africans, as soon as they land, whether the Ethiopian community or the Senegalese community or other communities, they join a neighborhood association. The Senegalese association of whatever, the Ethiopian association of whatever. And this is where they find a sense of community. Or organizational activities that are ethnic focused or country focused. So this has been in lieu of something different, a place where people go because members of this association speak the same language they speak. They understand the same culture that they come from. They are understood better. They are not misjudged. They are not put in a box, or they are not stigmatized. And this is where people feel comfortable. So whether it is a religious organization, either Muslims or Christians or Hindu or whichever faith people practice, this is where a sense of community really starts. But I find that a small problem with that is it tends to be limited to just those people that are from that country or that are part of that culture. So there's little interaction with other communities or other cultures or other people from other countries. And I think that could add to the diversity, that could add to the promotion of dialogue, and that could add to to addressing challenges that all of those communities face. Because you have all of these organizations that are small organizations. Each one of them is addressing healthcare or jobs or public safety. Each one of them is addressing it separately from everybody else. So there's a repetition of efforts. There's a duplication of efforts. Resources are being wasted only if we could do this together as one larger community rather than separate institutions and separate communities.
I am of the belief that you can find your community wherever you are. And for me, one of the big things that happened when I joined my undergraduate school was becoming a part of the Black Students Association on campus. African students, but also African American students. And that was something I identified with very early, and it gave me a community, it gave me a home, it gave me a lot of arts people that were there in Oakland at the time, musicians and dancers and so on. It gave me a community to connect to, and it was a world I was already a part of in Ethiopia, I felt, at least had some affinity towards. So that happened fairly quickly. There's a large Ethiopian community in Oakland as well, and after undergrad I worked at the Ethiopian Community Center. So that was another experience, sort of working with refugees and immigrants that were coming into the area, and seeing what their challenges were and working closely with them. But I think community is really, where you are. You can build it, you can connect to people, there's always universal things that connect human beings in general, and so one has to build from wherever life takes you. That's where you build your community from in many ways.
Because we don't read a book about our history. We go through many different traditional initiation and things to learn about the history. It's not like here, we don't read a book about it. So that gives us a more knowledgeable and to able to really create and able to remember things, because that's the way we grow. Because soon you kid, that's the one exercise your mind to able to really keep that tradition going. Doesn't matter where you go. I've been at Howard for 32 years. It's an institute well known around the world, and people want to go there. It's look like a dream come true. I got this big conference every Labor Day. That's my biggest production every year. They come from all over the United States. All the alumni in Howard always work with me, and they end coming back every year, rehearse with the company to do that production. It's a lot of people come out of Howard. So you tell people sometime, and you see them in television, and then you say, she come from Howard, because a lot of time people don't know. It's a lot of these actors now in television and things come from Howard.
I left Washington and I went to Atlanta. My family moved to Atlanta, and again, like I said, I didn't have a choice. I just had to be dragged, so I went to Atlanta to finish high school in Atlanta. I really didn't have a plan A or plan B. I was selling t-shirts on the sidewalk of Atlanta, fixing watches, selling watches at the flea market. Shortly after that, I decided that I have to go to college. I have to get an education. But there was no way to pay for it. Education is very expensive in the United States, which is another challenge that African Americans face. I didn't have the luxury of my parents giving me $50,000 to pay for my education. I had to find my own way. I met a coach who sent me to South Carolina to meet his friend. His name is Ike Ofoji. He recruited me to come play soccer at the University of South Carolina in Aiken. And he told me, I'm not bringing you here to play soccer. I'm bringing you here to go to school. My first job in college, as I tell the story sometime, I was earning $15 a week on Wednesdays. $15 a week was my entire budget in college. My first 3 years of college, I was sleeping on a floor that was even harder than this floor right here. On the floor, literally. So I ended up, for about 4 years of college, that's what I did. Pay for my tuition in installment. I mean, it got better my last year. So that was the challenge of my life. Coming to America, and you look at the dichotomy here. People think of Africa as being poor. People are hungry. But I had to come to the United States to go to bed hungry many times. If I had to write a book about my life, I would mainly focus on those 4 years of those challenges that we faced. And I wasn't the only one. There were many immigrants who were there with me, who faced, if not harder, but way more harder challenges than I did. But I had an opportunity to grow up in a family that put values of dignity, of sincerity, of hard work, and going out as far as you can before you give up, if give up ever exists.
I came here, like I said, I was 16 years old. I came here to go to school. I came here, I had an uncle who I came to see him, and I stayed with him. And I thought I was going to study and go back to my country. And when I came, there's a huge difference. I mean, I came from Ethiopia, East Africa. Some of you don't know where Ethiopia is, East Africa. And I came here, there's a big difference and a huge opportunity. I mean, it's open. I mean, I feel it, this is like my home. I feel like this is my home. It gives you an opportunity to study, to work, to succeed.
Well, like most immigrant parents, my folks had visions of me becoming a doctor. That's kind of the threshold or the the be-all, end-all, be-all. And so that actually was the trajectory I was on through undergrad. Oddly enough, that was never a forte of mine. And it was something that I was always trying to squeeze into a box to do. And when I moved to the district, I was actually working as a medical technologist. And I started working at Washington Adventist Hospital. Then I went on to Greater Southeast Community Hospital across the river. And then I ended up at the Children's Hospital. And my job was to look through the scopes, microscopes to be exact, and study your blood. Or if you peed into a cup, I was the one that was running tests. And I realized, okay, this is great. This is meaningful, this is impactful, but this is not me. And on top of that, one thing that was always a strength of mine, as I said earlier, was connecting with folks. And I wanted to find a vocation where I could actually connect with people one-on-one, not their bodily fluids. And so I went back to what I always knew I wanted to do, which was law. But how I was going to actually practice law kind of evolved while I was in law school. Initially, I had visions of being an international attorney. I thought I was going to work in the UN, I was going to be flying around the world, I would be at exotic posts, and I actually didn't have any conceptual idea of how that vocation would manifest itself. I just knew I wanted to be on a plane dealing with the citizens of the world. And then when I started law school, I was in the evening program. I went to American University here in the district, and I was in the evening program but working in the day at the hospital.
People rarely show the positive side of Africa. Right? People rarely show the accomplishments, the advancements of Africa. So that contributes to the stereotypes. But when we come here with African Americans and other immigrants, we realize that we really have more in common than separates us. Yes, languages may be an issue, or culture is an issue, or religion for that matter. But at the end of the day, we share the same background, we share the same history, we share similar cultures.
You got to look at it like little kid. You always see little kid what they do. And my experience teaching here, I always tell parents, watch him very carefully what he like to do. Because when you're a kid, you always like to dance, you like to act. Some of the kids, they like to create things. I say, support them with that. That's part of my journey, working with the community.
It's always been important to serve the community, the extended African diaspora community, including Caribbean and African American communities, in some way, to remain connected and to remain in a space of trying to serve the community, figure out what the needs might be, and the arts have been a part of that.
I remember my very first case was an asylum case with a woman from Central Africa. And by the tail end of that process, myself, the asylum officer, and the young lady that was the applicant were all in tears. And I knew at the close of that interview with the asylum officer, this is exactly what I need to be doing.
I tell the immigrants, you have the land of opportunity. This is a beautiful city. This is the world-class city. I mean, we're not only the capital city of United States of America, we are the capital city of the world. This is where people need to be. I mean, I came to $50 in my pocket. Now I have 500-600 employees. You know, we have a good operations. I'm so happy to be a part of the city, you know? I'm very happy to tell you my story.
I think it's getting much better, to be honest. Since I came to the US a couple of years ago, over 10 years, 15 years ago, I think it has gotten a lot better. But there's a lot more work to be done. But I think it all has to do with the image that we are portrayed. When I was back home, I was very certain that when I come to the United States, as soon as I land, I'll have a Jaguar waiting for me, or I'll live in a fancy mansion, because that's what we saw on TV. I grew up watching, shows like Dallas, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where they don't really show you the real side of it.
I think one of the major challenges I had as a child was probably was my name, Aster. people came up with Ashley, Astrid, everything but Aster. And it was really hard for me as a child, because obviously kids, we can be evil sometimes, have a tendency to come up with strange things. So I went through a period where people were saying the weirdest names for me, but I think that made me tougher. And I'm so thankful my parents were able to name me an Ethiopian name, and that's something that I do cherish. Another thing that I think growing up was a little hard for me was possibly the language barrier with my parents at a younger age. Seeing my parents have to go through some of the things they went through, I know that it was not easy, but it was definitely a sign of how strong their characters are. And I'm very glad that we were able to get through some of the younger years of my life. So,
as a young immigrant, you go through a lot of processes, obstacles. You don't have enough money. You don't have a family to support you. I mean, you might have an uncle or family member, but they're all struggling to work, even to pay on their own rents and to survive. And it was tough. It wasn't easy. I mean, the success doesn't come that easy. My success story is different, but the hard time was paid. I paid all the hard times. I mean, there was a time where I didn't have money. There was a time I used to walk to school. There was a time I didn't have money for buses. There was a time, I didn't have enough money to pay the rent, and we'd live with roommates, 2, 3 friends together in 1-bedroom apartment. I've been there, done that, It wasn't easy, but I think my success comes from the struggling time. I see that. If you're strong, this is the only place you can make it, It was tough. I mean, there was a lot of times I went through hard times. Even after I opened my business, I mean, it was a struggle time.
So I think one of the biggest challenges that the African diaspora immigrant community has is actually not having a voice. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of grassroots efforts to actually rally the different African diaspora communities together, and more specifically also to show that in showcasing and or highlighting how we are distinct, it doesn't have to be a way to divide us either. A lot of times there's a lot of discord between the African diaspora and the African American population. A lot of times because there is this idea that our interests have to be in one way or another antagonistic. And or if you are supporting the diaspora community in one way or another, you're taking away from the African American community. And so we're dealing with these different side struggles that no one really talks about, no one really understands. And again, the issues are more than likely lost because no one even hears them. And so one of the challenges for those of us that are active in the diaspora community is to actually highlight what our issues are so that they can be addressed. Because if they are not addressed, that's only detrimental for the community at large. And so it's about, like I said earlier, highlighting what our issues and our interests are. And that is a challenge depending on the support that we have within the communities that we now find ourselves living in.
We use our African way to let them know you got to be yourself. You don't have to imitate nobody to be accepted. We just use all the things we grow up on, get whooped for it to understand. We can do that here, whooping them. We can give it to them in a different way. But you got to earn them. And to earn them, you got to be around their word and also be their mom and dad and everything else. That's the thing we have to do.
I think it's a really exciting time for Africans here and Africans on the continent. I think it's a time when all the right connections are building and the perception of Africa is changing, and Africans are really becoming the center of the narrative, finally. Being able to tell our own stories, being able to connect with each other and find those linkages. I think it is really, truly a time of change. And it's exciting to be a part of that in ways that are personal but also professional, and to be a part of a dynamic that might change the conversation. So that is an honor. It's being, born at the right time at the right place, but also being, having lived that life for a long time and then seeing those same values reflected by a larger community of people everywhere, here and on the continent. So we're a part of something grander, all of us, and that's exciting.
Success doesn't come that easy. It takes time. Keep your words, follow your dreams, and success comes with a series of relationships. Means when I say relationship, you have to build up a relationship. Relationship doesn't come that easy. Relationships and network with people, and then you can succeed. Everything is very important. So this is Washington D.C., a land of opportunity. I mean, this is a small business friendly. I think I tell everyone, you can make it. It's easy, and work hard. You'll succeed.
I think at the end of the day, when I go home, when I close my files, turn off my computer, there are several things that really just bring the story full circle. One of which is I'm doing exactly what I was meant to be doing. And so much of that has to do with who raised me and how I was raised and the opportunities I was given here in America. And I'm just thankful for that. I'm not going to be Johnny Cochran. I'm not going to be rolling around in a supersonic luxury vehicle and throwing out dollar bills to the community that I'm a part of. However, I've got something to give back, and I love it. And that actually brings me joy.
In 2009, when I went to Ethiopia, we started in Mekelle, where my mom, her side of the family is from, which is a different ethnic group within Ethiopia from my father's side, and they speak Tigrinya. So when I was there, I was constantly being bombarded with Tigrinya left and right, left and right. And for me, growing up in a home that only spoke Amharic, which is my father's language, it was tough for me. The first 2 weeks I wanted to leave. I was like, get me out of here, get me out of here. I want to go home. I don't want to be here. People are looking at me funny, they're making jokes. In reality, they're just trying to connect with me. And the hospitality of the country is ridiculous. It's amazing how much people will open up their heart to you, and all they know you through is through a phone call or through Skype. And sometimes I get emotional talking about it because it's my whole side of my family's there. So I'm very thankful that I was able to have my cousins there who helped with the transition because they wanted to learn English, obviously, so they're in my face all the time, which was great because basically we were going back and forth. I would learn some of this stuff, they would learn some of my things, and when I say I was forever changed from that experience, I was forever changed. And I'm so thankful because I know a lot of people are unable to go. So I'm very, very thankful that my parents were able to make that decision once I graduated high school.
Well, the future, in my opinion, is very bright. The African community is the fastest growing immigrant group in the United States, even more so than those from Latin American countries, some have argued. When you look at the African Americans, the diaspora, we send over $50 billion in remittances back home. Now, more and more governments are interested in our work. What can person A do in a country A? Why can't they go back home and do it there? Because they have the skill, they have the talent. On U Street, for example, you have many, many Ethiopian-owned businesses there. So the future is just very bright. There has to be an opportunity for us to tell our stories. There has to be an opportunity for us to dictate the dialogue rather than letting somebody else tell our own stories. And I think that's been one of the major issues that we have. People have been telling our own stories for a long time, but we have to tell our own stories. We have to be able to let people know that Africa is not just about a festival or a soccer game. So I think that we are in a good place right now. People are engaged, people are energetic, people are motivated to be part of the discussion. And I think we have to do a good job at, again, changing the narrative in many ways.